I'll be there as friends come and go. I'll teach you everything I know. And I'll be there as your world twists and turns. Just be there to rock and roll with me. But you were taken too soon. When we meet again, promise me you'll be there to rock and roll with me.
On November 12, 2010, the whole of one man's world came crashing down. His beloved Munko, his daughter Georgia, was gone, passing away on the operating table after battling congenital heart problems throughout her young life. In a desperate attempt to make sense of the tragedy and loss every parent fears above all else, he set out on a journey to explore the world and seek clues as to how his life could ever continue on without her.
Traveling the world looking for adventure and fun. Do it on your own, do it with a friend, or just meet someone. So that's your story, everybody's got one to tell. And I wanna thank you all from the bottom of my heart for trying to help me make a brand new start.
Stopovers in Earth's tropical paradises started to bring back glimpses of life's beauty, and joy was beginning to not seem so far away. On the journey, these scenes of serenity were contrasted with stops in areas displaying life in its rawest and grittiest forms, where people dwelled in poverty and despair. It was in one of these underdeveloped nations that a spark of an idea took hold in his mind. It was the children that had to be helped. They had to be shown what hope is. And so thus began the journey that would soon show itself to be, just as its motto states, driven by love, guided by angels. Georgia's Children of the World had come into being, and it had a mission to fulfill. Steve Murray has always been a man of passion, and he has always followed his passion. Never seeing the need to live life the same as he had seen around him, he went his own way. And it's no surprise that he was one of the youngest kids to get involved in Manchester's emerging punk rock scene of the late 70s, early 80s. So it was only natural that his spark of an idea would be a music festival, the G-Fest, named in honor of Georgia Louise Carrera Murray, to bring together people in the name of love, friendship, and giving. The grassroots event went off well, and Georgia's Children of the World was about to start down a road that would begin to bring life to the dreams of its founder and hopes to children in peril throughout the world.
So fly, oh my sweet angels, be everything you wanna be. Raise your glass and remember to always stay free.
Now, with funds raised from the generous supporters of Georgia's Children, it was time to return to where he had experienced a strange connection with an area, and he felt a force willing him back to help.
So after travelling the world, after losing Georgia in the operation in November 2010, I discovered Cambodia and decided to return here. It was a country that was sharing the same grief that I was, having lost a child. Cambodia was a country that every family had lost somebody only 35 years earlier in the Khmer Rouge.
The spirit of Cambodia had captured him. In it he saw a land of stark contrasts. And as with every third world country, there is a large disparity between the haves and the have-nots. The modern development standing in direct opposition to the lack of basic human needs in rural areas. It had been in Cambodia that he had witnessed children desperately in need of hope. He was determined to give a future to these youngsters, so he set about on a search for worthy organizations who would receive donations in the name of Georgia. And as happens when things are guided by angels, it was only a matter of days after arriving in Cambodia that he met Ross Wright, a co-founder with an organization called Choice Cambodia. So this is where I enter into this journey, and why I'm telling you this story. I too had been introduced to a charity called Choice Cambodia, and it was where I would meet Steve Murray, the man behind this George's Children organization I had heard such high praise of. Well, we hit it off, and he started to illustrate his involvement with Choice through photographs of the construction of the initial center and the growth that he was helping to fuel. As we shared our stories, I saw in him a man who was suffering through what is said to be the hardest loss a human can bear, the loss of your child. In spite of that, I saw too a survivor who was resilient and committed and loyal. In time, I also got to share in the vulnerabilities that an artistic soul carries and bears. It turned out that he saw some of the same qualities in me as he watched an accident-surviving amputee carrying on about his life by climbing over or busting through the challenges that life brings. So it was in these first days of our meeting that this friendship bonded and this journey came together and started. And then he was there as my personal situation came to be very much like his own. He was there for me the day I first met the son I'd been blocked from seeing until he was 4 months old. And he was there on the trip home to give me a hug when the tears came, and the universe showed us the beauty that it holds with a glorious sunset. And he's been there in the years that followed, where I've been completely blocked from his life. So in a small way we share the loss of a child, and it has only made my respect for him grow larger and larger.
It was a life-changing thing, so Cambodia was a place that fascinated me. It was similar to yourself, wasn't it, really, you know?
Yeah.
It's a spiritual kind of land, isn't it?
It is.
You know, because you've had your problems too, and it's brought you to the same conclusions.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so you have to give something back, and this is a land where you feel you can do that. That's the computer room. It's got no roof on or anything, you know. That's what it was like inside. Again, that's George's house, so that's where the sign is. So this is where we're stood now.
Oh, I have to believe in something bigger, 'cause I'm tired of feeling so small. Oh, I have to believe, Lord, that there's an answer, 'cause I know you've heard my call. And the dirt I'm covered in will all be washed away. I keep walking in the promise of a brand new day. A brand new day.
Yes, so here we are in one of the villages that the Choice sent to look after, supported by George's Children. One of the key things to do is what we call a water run, because the only clean water supply these people get is the water that Choice bring out to the villagers, which is to get about 60 litres per family every week. The other water they have is down here in the ditches, and that's what they use for basically for washing themselves in. They tried digging wells here, but the water table is so full of arsenic that there's no other way they can get clean water to them. So that's why we come out 4 times a week with the truck to fill up the canisters here for fresh water for the people out here.
On a trip to Cambodia, Steve was accompanied by a group of volunteers from Manchester, and they got to see firsthand the works that Steve is facilitating. The harsh living conditions of the locals can be very difficult to experience and process for first-timers, and at times it can be completely overwhelming.
This is the kindergarten here, and this is their shelter. This is where they'll eat lunch. The money we try to put a one of these 9 plates. You'll see them there in the plates. So they'll last forever and they're engraved. They cost
The volunteers were here to complete the finishing touches on Carol's classroom, a facility for the kindergarten-age children of the centre. They set about the task with a joy that only comes from trying to make a difference in the lives of humans that have been less fortunate than ourselves. The Choice Centre provides a hot lunch for the children to ensure that they are receiving at least one nutritious meal per day. The children take part in the delivery of these lunches and also in the cleaning up of the day's messes, teaching them valuable life skills.
Hello, here we are at George's house at the Choice Centre, 5 years after losing Georgia. But this is the first place where George's Children's World really began. And I'm so grateful for Choice to give me the chance to give these children an opportunity to develop. And I'd like to introduce you to Vanny, who is the Choice Centre manager. And this is now 4 years we've been helping Choice, and this is what has become something a little bit special to all of us.
Still, we are just like so happy, and we would like to say thank you to you that you've been helping Choice for 4 years, and we are really just like much appreciate this what you have. So, everyone, please say many thanks to
Steve next came across an organization named Building Futures Today, run by a man named Sita Long, located in Siem Reap, Cambodia, and they were the next to receive George's support. Their focus is in the rural areas of Cambodia, and Steve was introduced to Urong village. The villagers face a huge problem with the lack of access to year-round source of clean water and with absolutely no opportunities existing for their children to be educated.
So here we are at George's House 3, the school that changed our community. It took us about 2 months to build the school, just over 2 years ago, with the help of volunteers from all over the world and some very, very skilled local labour. And it's made such a huge difference to this area that many, many people have now started to move into the area so their children can benefit from the education that the school offers here. Okay, so here we are stood outside the original school building, which you see could just about hold 20 or 30 kids. It was used shortly for teacher accommodation, but now, because there is no space, they've had to convert it back into a temporary classroom until we can build the new school building.
The group of volunteers ventured out to the site, and they got down to the task of making the dream of George's House 6 become a reality. The children of the village, in spite of their living conditions, embraced the opportunity for an education, and like children the world over, they use what they have and they revel in their childhood and find joy in their allotted playtimes. But when the call comes, they enthusiastically take part in the heavy labor required to make their new school come to life. One of the volunteers, in his wonderful Eastern European accent, remarked, "Could you imagine if we do this in the West? Oh my word, we'd be in jail for 20 years, child labor, and we take photos too." But such is the difference in the state of the worlds that we exist in compared to these young children.
So 6 years on from originally coming to Cambodia to try and help these people, my spiritual home, the place where I found some kind of solace. We're now at the site of George's House 6, hoping to be a little bit further on, but rural life got in the way, and unfortunately the mother-in-law of the builder died only a few days ago, and building has come to a halt.
The construction had to come to a halt, but the volunteers used the time to provide the maintenance that is required to preserve these buildings from Cambodia's extreme heat and punishing rainy season.
Only a week or so prior to that, we witnessed a small miracle of water coming out of the ground. The first time I've ever seen a well dug, and that was quite an incredible sight of seeing the water coming up from 50 metres down in the ground, spurting it up into the air, in a village that only 3 years ago had no water whatsoever. During the dry season, these people just didn't have anything.
The next stop on this journey took us out to what is called the Jungle Village, an even more remote group of people whose children will walk for over an hour to attend the school. The inhabitants exist out here without access to the life-giving gift of water. The team from BFT provides formula milk for mothers who are often too undernourished to provide breast milk of their own. Basic medical attention and the necessary follow-up treatment for these impoverished people is also provided. George's children funded 2 more wells in 2017 to ease their burden, and the effects on the lives of the people was immediately witnessed, as seen with their joy. While out in the village, a progress report of the furniture for the new building was also undertaken. And as you can see, the methods are very basic, but nonetheless very effective. Back at Orong School, George's children continued to assist in changing lives by providing bicycles for the always grateful children. The builders returned from the funeral, and a volunteer workforce of parents came out to complete the next phase of the building after Steve had to return to Manchester and dive into planning the upcoming G Festival, number 18. Khmers love to celebrate, so we spent the night living in the conditions of the local people and celebrating George's House 6 being one step closer to reality. Another situation supported by Steve's initiative is Mr. Ross's school, also located in the Siem Reap area, but he too searches the rural areas to find villages in need of his aid. This man's life is straight out of a fable. He was found by a local widow, abandoned and left in a banana leaf when he was only days old, and she has been his mother from that day on. He had suffered so many insect bites that it took her 3 weeks to heal him, but her son has taken that adversity and chosen to continue sharing the love he received by running a home where children can be safe. She is now 75 years old, but shows no signs of slowing as she still works full days helping at the school.
These children are all from the local areas. Some are street kids, some are orphans, some have difficulties with the families. So they are under the guidance of Mr. Ross. And here they learn English, they all go to Khmer school, or will eventually go to Khmer school where they get their proper qualifications. But these are the kids that are getting that chance, that opportunity to have an education, to develop, and maybe one day to reach university, like young Pissian here, who has been through exactly the same that these kids have, and now actually works for Mr. Ross as a volunteer teacher. So this is George's children's tuk-tuk, the essential transportation for Mr. Ross's school. This tuk-tuk gets used to take the children here, there and everywhere, and often used as a work vehicle, amongst other things. But the reason behind buying the tuk-tuk in the first place was that Mr. Ross had some very, very sick children out in the provinces. They were very sick with dengue fever, which can become fatal. He managed to get 2 of the children back to the hospital on his motorbike, and he returned to pick the other 2 children up. Unfortunately, one of the children died on the way back. He told me this story, which I was devastated by, and I thought, he said if he had a tuk-tuk, he could have brought all 4 children back at the same time, and that young life would have been saved. So that was the reason behind us buying the tuk-tuk, that hopefully that problem would never happen again. Since then, there have been instances of children with dengue fever, and we've been able to support Mr. Ross with medicine. And since then, there have been no further fatalities. And that makes this whole thing so worthwhile, that we are achieving something that is saving lives. And the tuk-tuk is being used to give these children an opportunity to get around and get here, there and everywhere. And you never get on this tuk-tuk without some of the children being on the tuk-tuk. And they're always so welcome to see you. And it's become, say, an integral part of George's children and the partnership with Mr. Ross's house.
Mr. Ross's school has always faced flooding issues whenever it rains. So with George's support, the problem is being tackled by a new building with raised foundations. The expansion was also needed to provide classrooms and sleeping space for the growing number of children relying on the school. The children here also take pride in participating in the construction in any way they can, oftentimes relishing in the heavy lifting required to move the building materials. A large part of Mr. Ross's effort goes into teaching the children life skills by having them participate in kitchen duties at the school and through field trips and outings. He also instills in them a pride for their culture, as the internet brings change to the children's influences, outlooks, and expectations. These trips to the rural areas most often coincide with a visit to some school children who will receive school supplies that allow them to continue participating in their classroom activities. These outings are twofold. As he is teaching the children traditional methods of fishing, he's also supplementing the food supply for the children, because here, there's no such thing as catch and release. Feeding your hungry children takes priority over any size limits. Although, on occasion, he is able to make a big catch and sell it at market for a profit and use the funds in a more cost-effective way to feed the children even more. Music was a passion that Steve and Georgia shared. Cambodians too have a real love of music and singing, so it was only natural then that what began by donating a guitar and then a set of drums would lead to the creation of Georgia's School of Rock to inspire these children to reach even further with their dreams.
The dream of what I wanted to achieve out in the world has also come true. It's to stand in front of George's House 3, a grassroots project in a village that had absolutely nothing just 3.5 years ago, that now thrives, has doubled in population, has a school that's run by a highly educated young man and giving these children potential. So I want to say thank you to everybody who supports G Festival, who supports Georgia's Children of the World, who believes in me, who believes in Georgia, and who believes in the good in the world.
The work that Steve undertakes in Georgia's name is regularly performed under difficult conditions that test the strength and spirits of all. One often witnesses things that can take a human beyond the limits of what they thought they could endure in terms of human suffering. At times, the emotions can be overwhelming, but I have stopped being shocked by the amount of hearts and balloons that pop up to remind Steve's spirit to never diminish and push on. The emotional toll of losing Georgia is never ending, but his infectious smile returns and he inspires us all to do more and keep pushing on. Steve's energy is infectious, and its influence can be seen in the relationships he has built around the world and in the work he has inspired so many to participate in.
You are